Welcome to the film analysis, today with The Truman Show by Peter Weir. Released to cinemas in 1998, reality caught up quickly with it a year later, as the reality TV show Big Brother was launched in 1999. To this day, there is an abundance of reality TV and it remains popular. But even the Big Brother idea was soon overtaken by reality, by digital media, smartphones and drones. We film and take photos all the time. Added to this is the surveillance of the public, whether London or Singapore. The Truman Show is now taking place everywhere. In other words, the Truman Show has aged badly. But is that true? Have we already covered everything? Screenwriter Andrew Niccol and director Peter Weir did well to set the artificial coastal city built under a huge dome in the 1950s, or rather to evoke a 50s style, even though everything is set in the present day. Even today we have an extraordinarily strong longing for the past. There is a longing for retrotopia, above all because everything seemed so simple there, so clear. Jim Carrey, already one of the best actors in the world, plays Truman Burbank, who was adopted by an entertainment company and grew up in an artificial world without realizing that he lives in an artificial world and is the protagonist of a globally successful show. It only dawns on Truman after about 29 years. Something is off. Strange things are happening. A spotlight suddenly falls from the sky and all the citizens are behaving strangely. Some of them repeat phrases far too often and you get the impression that they are acting like extras. However, Truman is consistently prevented from leaving the city. He really wants to go to Fiji, but even the travel agency can't help him. Truman also suspects that something is wrong with those closest to him. At least with his wife. Is she just playing tricks on him? And what about his best friend? Well, they will all turn out to be actors. Later, Truman plans his escape to freedom, but that's only one level of the film. There's a second and a third level. The second is the level behind the scenes of the show. We see the director called Christof overseeing everything. He gives instructions for the editing, the use of music. We see how the cameras move, an incredibly large team working in the background. This is where we learn how the show is conceived. The third level consists of the viewers in front of the television. There are two old ladies on the sofa, people in the pub, security guards neglecting their duties a little and staring at the screen instead. They all cheer, suffer and laugh along with Truman. On the one hand, we as viewers have an overview over everything, so we are the observers of the observers of the observers, and on the other hand, we share the TV viewers' excitement as we too are curious to see whether Truman will succeed in escaping. Who are we today when watching the film? Surely we wish we were Truman and realize something is wrong, but we are the least Truman. We know very well that we are being filmed or that we are filming ourselves. On the one hand, we are the directors of our lives, but on the other hand, we are also the actors. We resemble the actors in Truman's city. We stage ourselves, we play roles. Incidentally, we were already doing this in pre-digital times, as the sociologist Erving Goffman analyzed. He put forward the theory that we all play theater, meaning we play roles depending on the context, as a family member, at work, wherever. In this sense, an authentic self doesn't exist. The masks we wear are also me. Let's consider another film featuring Jim Carrey, Frank Darabont's The Majestic. It's not a particularly good film, but a Truman variation. In it, Jim Carrey is washed up in a foreign city by an unfortunate accident. He is fished ashore there, and everyone in the town now believes Carrey to be a war hero who has been dead for almost 10 years, although he is just a screenwriter. Carrey remembers nothing and accepts the role he was given. He plays it very credibly, and although he only takes on the role, he feels it, becoming particularly noticeable when he tearfully says goodbye to his supposed father. This film is also set against a 50s backdrop, but they really are supposed to represent the 50s. However, the inhabitants of the small town are just as artificial and affected as the actors from The Truman Show. This good behavior, this dreadful familiarity, an always blissful smile, the good America. A copy of what has been produced by the media. The tragic thing about Frank Darabont is that he suggests this to be the good and true America and depicts it accordingly. Rather, it's a mere illusion, role play, and in a way, the person playing the role, Jim Carrey, is the only authentic person, if you like. However, The Truman Show suggests a strict separation of reality and fiction. But does this reality exist? Isn't that a bit too simplistic? Well, the simulation theorist Jean Baudrillard would say that you can't make this separation, especially not in America. Having traveled the USA in the 1980s, he published the enchanting book America. He writes the following on fiction and reality. In fact, the cinema here is not where you think it is. It is certainly not to be found in the studios the tourist crowds flock to, Universal, Paramount, etc., those subdivisions of Disneyland. Where is the cinema? It is all around you outside, all over the city. That marvelous continuous performance of films and scenarios, it is not the least of America's charms that even outside the movie theaters, the whole country is cinematic. The desert you pass through is like the set of a Western, the city a screen of signs and formulas." End of quote. In the digitalized age, one could argue we live in a simulation, or rather simulation and reality are congruent. Baudrillard would say that we can no longer get behind it as the behind has disappeared. But we also live, when it comes to these screens, in an advertising world. Product placement funds the expensive Truman Show. When Truman's fellow viewers constantly incorporate brand names into the dialogue, or Truman is pushed towards an advertising poster so that it can be seen in the picture, then we are already seeing today's influencer marketing. We are all surrounded by thousands of logos in the world we live in. Is there really a behind all these logos and simulations? Can we overcome them and open a door? There is no such simple exit, but that is exactly what conspiracy theories promise. There, behind it, lays the truth. That is where we have arrived in reality. When I say conspiracy theories, I don't refer to conspiracy theories as true theories, nor would I deny the existence of conspiracies. Of course, there are always conspiracies. Incidentally, you can even experience this on a small scale when conspiracies take place in families, and of course we also find this on a political and economic level. Just think of the right German terrorists called NSU, conspiracies that have hardly been cleared up, and a lot of things are lying dormant in the files that are now under lock and key. Of course, there are always conspiracies, but there is no one conspiracy that explains everything to us as it really is. In short, we don't get to reality by having a theory. That is the great promise of the conspiracy theory, the great explanation of the world. One powerful person or group controlling everything. This is religion, the search for a monocausal explanation for the complexity of the world. Conspiracy theorists are in that sense believers. They believe that there is a God behind everything, be it evil or good. This is exactly what the Truman Show with its director Christof covers. On the one hand, Christof refers to St. Christopher, who carries the baby Jesus across the river, who looks after everything and takes care of everything. Truman doesn't need to be afraid at all. At the same time, Christof also contains Christ, and Truman's boat, as one of numerous Christian references, is called Santa Maria and has the number 139 on it, which is Psalm 139. You hem me in, behind and before, and lay your hand upon me. However, it contains a dystopian twist, as the powerful director in the background controls and guides the Truman Show. Secularization, as can be seen right now when conspiracy theories are immensely popular, does not cause faith to disappear, it just goes somewhere else. What's more, we often don't believe that we believe, hence conspiracy theories clearly work with pseudo-facts, so as not to admit that they really believe. In principle, Truman is also someone who believes that there is something outside, and the film's dramaturgy proves him right. In a way, Truman is even enviable, continuing to fascinate to this day. He has a direct opponent, namely Christof. We, however, lack this very direct opponent. At the same time, the film features a typical Hollywood father-son conflict. A single opponent is a tempting prospect, one of the reasons why conspiracy theories often go viral. They are linked to the fantasy that once this component has been defeated, everything will be fine. However, our world is not as clear-cut as Truman's. As mentioned, there are powerful players, for example, in the media, in digital corporations, etc. But we are more than victims as Truman. We are accomplices. We are actors and directors of ourselves, and we are spectators. Like the viewers who are presented to us in the film, we as viewers are also collaborators. The viewers do not rebel against the fact that a TV company is playing fate with a human life. They simply continue to watch. There is something reassuring about Truman's fate for the viewer, and that also applies to us. This secret fantasy that there is some kind of control taking place. Just as for conspiracy theorists, this can also be very reassuring for us viewers. This God, Christof, is worried about Truman, but we must differentiate here as to which care is meant. This is where the philosopher Martin Heidegger and his book Being and Time can help us. Heidegger distinguishes between two forms of care. He writes, with regard to its positive modes, concern has two extreme possibilities. It can, so to speak, take the other's care away from him and put itself in his place in taking care. It can leap in for him. Concern takes over, that is to be take care of for the other. The other is thus displaced. He steps back so that afterwards, when the matter has been attended to, he can take it over as something finished and available, or burden himself of it completely. In contrast to this, there is the possibility of a concern which does not so much leap in for the other as leap ahead of him, not in order to take care away from him, but to first to give it back to him as such. This concern, which essentially pertains to authentic care, that is, existence of the other, and not to what which it takes care of, helps the other to become transparent to himself in his care and free for it. The desire for this initial care is very pronounced. Incidentally, also among those citizens who tend to say that the surveillance state and surveillance companies are not so bad because security comes first. The security that citizens dream of is one in which they are relieved of having to make any decisions at all and take care of themselves. The second form of care is something overly complicated. It is an enabling care, and we may find it in the film in Truman's Missing Lover, but not otherwise. In a way, it provides the impetus for the freedom to care for oneself. But the viewers who are sitting in front to their TVs are not affected by this care. After the end of the show, they simply pick up the program and see what's on next. The viewers are comparable to Truman's fellow human beings who, in addition to product placement, primarily reproduce ideology in the sense of false consciousness. Even Truman's supposed best friend doesn't tell him anything other than be content. Don't be too critical. Enjoy what you have and what you are. In a very concrete sense, the aim here is to stabilize the prevailing order. The show must go on. But who is speaking here? A personalized answer could be that the director is behind it all. Applied to society, this is too simple. Society is more complex. The ideology itself is speaking here, and it is a systemic one. It is the ideology of business as usual, growth capitalism. The very ideology from which the corporation in the Truman Show benefits. But beyond this critique of ideology, which is not particularly far-sighted or clear-sighted, the film also carries an existential philosophical aspect. If we asked who is speaking to Truman, Heidegger would probably answer das Mann, they. What is meant by this they? Heidegger writes the following on the issue. In utilizing public transportation, in the use of information services such as the newspaper, every other is like the next. This being with one another dissolves one's own Dasein completely into the kind of being of the others in such a way that the others, as distinguishable and explicit, disappear more and more. In the inconspicuousness and inascertainability, the they unfolds its true dictatorship. We enjoy ourselves and have fun the way they enjoy themselves. We read, see and judge literature and art the way they see and judge. But we also withdraw from the great mass. The way they withdraw, we find shocking what they find shocking. And they, which is nothing definite and which all are, though not as a sum, prescribes the kind of being of everydayness. End of quote. Truman is constantly exposed to this everyday way of being, and in a certain way the viewers on the screens also enjoy, as we are shown precisely this everyday way of being, because it confirms their own way of being. But that's not enough for Truman. In principle, he asks what his actual being is, a process that can be set in motion but does not have to be, because this domination of the they is total. Heidegger writes about this, relating to the German word Dasein, which literally means being there and can be translated by existence. Initially, Dasein is the they, and for the most part it remains so. If Dasein explicitly discovers the world and brings it near, if it discloses its authentic being to itself, this discovering of world and disclosing of Dasein always comes about by clearing away coverings and obscurities, by breaking up the disguises with which Dasein cuts itself off from itself. End of quote. Consequently, it is quite possible. We see in Truman how he opens his own being from they, from the participating in the they, the talk of others. He opens the world to himself, and then, and this is also Heideggerian, if you like, decides namely to break out. At the same time, however, and this is where the parallels to Heidegger end, such exceptional states of the subject, as Heidegger calls it, are not actually intended by Heidegger, because one cannot completely detach oneself from the they, from this talk. One can only develop out of it, but is always in a reciprocal relationship with it. The Truman Show features an existential outburst, while Heidegger does not envisage a real escape. The film remains a bit simplistic, but what then, one might ask, if such an escape is not possible? What has become of Truman at the end when he steps out of the film, out of the show? Here again, Baudrillard could deliver an answer. He said, if you step out of Disney World in Florida, you have only arrived in an even bigger Disney World. In other words, Truman arrived in an even bigger Truman Show, and he is watching, but not seeing.
It would be nice if you would like to support the film analysis financially. You can do so via my bank account or PayPal. Also, you can find me on Patreon. Thank you very much.